Welcome to the Wrestle Fan Wrestling Show on the Big Beefy Boy Shaz Beef, and today I'm joined by my fellow old buck in Morro, and Johnny The Beast Mortos. How are you getting on, sir?
I'm good. It's good to be between you boys while you're rushing away.
We're in our hats.
In your mark hats.
Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show and an All Elite Morro hat.
Merch!
Are you going to give back Dunphy's WCW hat? No, he's never getting that back.
I explained, I know he's an estate, not agent.
Yeah.
But I explained the concept of squatters' rights.
Yeah, good.
So you're stealing it.
I'm stealing that. I've had it since he gave it to me last August for 3 days because he wanted me to cut my hair a certain way for his play that he was directing.
Yeah.
That we were in.
Yeah, that's where this came about.
And you kept it.
Have you been wearing this hat regularly? Like, has this been a hat that's been
WCW
kind
hat.
of...
Yeah.
People on
Have you
TikTok
brought
call
into your
me-
everyday life?
Yeah, I wear it to work and everything. I wore golf one day, so I sweated in it.
People like use it as a stick to beat him with.
Yeah.
Out of all the sports brands, if from a
WCW.
sports management perspective, of all the sports brands in the world, the one you regularly choose to rep is WCW.
Yeah. It's like my own business.
That'd be like fucking having a Wimbledon hat.
my own business is 99 WCW at the moment.
How are we all anyway? We all good?
Fantastic.
Yeah. You're enjoying All Elite Morro?
Yeah, I'm enjoying All Elite tomorrow.
Yeah. When's the next one?
Sunday night.
You're gonna stick to this Sunday schedule,
Look,
is it?
there will be Sundays where it's
Some
not
days that it's
feasible.
not happening.
You're gonna be all elite on the Lord's Day.
I'm going to be All Elite on
the
Lord's
Sabbath.
Day. On the Sabbath. Don't roll on Shabbos.
You are fucking rolling on
I'm
Shabbos.
rolling on Shabbos. There will be one. I'm going to swap it to the Monday. It's Kilkenny versus Tip in the All Ireland hurling semi-final.
Ah, yes.
You know, so
Kind of have to.
yeah.
Getting a plug in there.
Try
and shift some tickets.
What I was thinking is I might do a live watch along of All In perhaps on the Saturday.
I could do a live watch along the Kilkenny and Tip match as well.
Yeah, fuck that, yeah. I can go live now.
Do it with Conor Hurley.
Yeah, me and
I've
fucking
given you the
Conor
details.
Hurley. Yeah, I have his number.
Get the two boys back together.
He bought a few trophies off me last week.
Double cup acts.
I was
Love
sending
it.
him a professional email, you know. I was going to write at the bottom with kind regards, Undertaker sucks, Niall Marcy. I didn't.
I think he both came to terms of agreement there.
I think we'll do some terms of agreement by the end of it. Yeah.
You're a good Joe.
You got called out on another podcast there, the 5 Marks.
Yeah.
5 Marks, another Irish podcast, says I was their favourite.
Is that where
You got a shout out too.
Did I?
Yeah, the Beast Mortos, this
Yeah.
is.
There is a more prominent Beast Mortos.
No, it's you.
No, you're the most
lads.
prominent Beast Mortos.
Yeah, like you should hit him up for copyright. Today, it's going to stem on from a conversation that we had, me, yourself, and yourself, Morro, all elite, about when we were on the Killing the Indies episode. We talked about kind of is it feasible to be an independent wrestler in this day and age, as opposed to being signed to a big company. And then with the inclusion of Abyss in the new WWE 2K game, that kind of really flooded back memories of watching him. So I think today's conversation stems around people who never made it to WWE
Or chose never to go.
or chose never to go. Now, sometimes you might get like a dark match where someone, like I might say Amazing Red, and someone
Yeah,
goes,
yeah.
well, Amazing Red
Yeah.
worked dark matches, and
Yeah.
you know,
Matt Jackson and
Chris Daniels, and
he did dark matches.
Chris Daniels, yeah, he did dark matches. He's in Beyond the Mat. You can see him kind of like repping in the
But
background.
also, he was like this kind of prominently featured. Like they gave him such respect at that time. He was such a glorified jobber is a completely different thing. But like he got to do cool as shit. Like he stood out on like WWE fucking metal or whatever.
Was it Jack?
Because like he was doing stuff that nobody else was doing, and he actually had generated enough heat where, you know.
And he was like 45 years of age at the time.
Like why did they get so fucking smallest? Because
he was
that's the
originally,
word. But like, you know what I mean? That was Sean Waltman's spot only 7 years beforehand or 6 years beforehand.
True,
he was like
not even that. Like 1, 2, 3 kids.
like
yeah.
the cruiserweight that we pretend is a jobber, and then they do the coolest shit you've seen on the fucking show. And believe me, that was Waltman with his like lopsided moonsault.
Yeah.
It was cooler than anything. But
he
like,
was purported to be the higher power. He was being pushed to be the, it's me, Austin. That was being pushed to be Chris Daniels.
I feel like, ultimately when you look back at that angle is kind of worse than the invasion angle.
That is
The invasion angle had at least a modicum of like internal logic that your suspension of disbelief is not completely tarnished by it. Whereas that whole higher power thing was the most convoluted, made no sense. It wasn't like all of the pieces tied up
logic.
in any way.
Yeah, not
it
tied
was,
up.
And again, maybe Vince McMahon gets off too lightly, but like 99 is the year where you go Pete Russo, and it was fucking Pete Russo.
He wins the Royal Rumble. He wins the title that year, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Russo, not the next year.
No, Vince. Vince McMahon.
Vince won it in Vince won it in 99. Yeah.
And he won the
Royal
Royal
Rumble.
Rumble.
Russo was out the door at that point. Like the real late 99 stuff, you can't blame on Russo, and that was also bad. Yeah. So they were in the fucking tailspin.
What you call it, 99 as well, the non-Christopher Daniels being the high in power. Was that 99 or 2000? That was 99. That was after WrestleMania.
There was talks about Christopher Daniels.
Daniels was kind of like that. Was this kind of prominent attitude era jobber?
Was he on Raw and stuff?
I don't think he made. Not any of the main. Not
he
the
was
main
just
shows.
like, and they did it with Loki as well before
Loki's
they made him
another
Caval. But they were these like state of the art indie wrestlers that would be on like Jacked and Metal and like the fucking B&C shows. And they tried it with Danielson for a while. They also tried it with AJ Styles for a while.
AJ Styles and the Hurricane have a really good match.
Yeah, like so the matches are really good. And these
Danielson
guys,
has one with.
Brian Danielson, John Cena,
John
Velocity.
Yeah, but there's,
John Cena on
there's
Velocity,
another one as well that's like would have been a fucking dream match. Danielson versus someone on
Morishima?
Joe was in
Morishima was brought in for a few dark matches.
No, Morishima was just a dark match. He wasn't televised. Like Morishima came in and like I don't know, like they were just like, look at his fucking fat baby. Like
that's what they call him.
They call him a fat baby. Like, and this guy's a fucking like in any other era.
He could have been Walter back then. But
That's exactly the spot.
Perfect.
He would have been though like Kenzo Suzuki or Tensai. He would have been the stereotypical Japanese.
had to write Japanese writing all over his body.
And he'd be dancing with Kozlov before he knows it.
Yeah, do you know like the Morishima Samoa Joe angle in Ring of Honor?
Yeah, but they're just slapping it like they
do
do a pull apart, don't they?
Yeah, so they do. I don't know. There's something. I can't remember what it was, like some ceremony or whatever.
Yeah,
and they're all walking back to the back. Like, they have the whole roster out there, and they're walking back to the back. And the two boys are like, "You go ahead of me, no, you go ahead of me." And then they like to bump off each other, and they start pushing each other, or whatever. And then Joe's like, "Right in the ring now." Big pull apart brawl sets up their match for later.
There's the fight.
Sick match as well.
There's the fight.
Like, what an angle.
Well, what happened to Morishima afterwards? He just went back to Japan. He
was in Noah and he was in All Japan, and
like I don't know if he necessarily would have succeeded with WWE like as
in that era, not a fucking
Japanese
chance.
guy. And like on the main topic of this conversation, like a lot of the people that you could bring up are probably Japanese wrestlers, but what you needed to do was you needed to have comic ability and comic timing. The most successful Japanese wrestler, in my opinion, in WWE history is Yoshihiro Tajiri.
Yeah,
by far.
And
like,
also,
like okay, actually, like you could say Nakamura, but like what's galling about Nakamura is that the timing was off in many ways.
Yeah, he was a shell of his former self for most of his run.
Just I legit him in the Vince era was just never going to fucking work. Tajiri came in like I remember in 2001 as a ECW mark and loving Tajiri at that time, being so excited about how he was coming in, and then seeing him as a fucking T-boy. But then those were the best segments.
I know.
He ends up
teaming with Regal. He teams with Eddie.
I'll tell you how good Tajiri was in this era. Within 2 months of his debut, he's locked into a program with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yes.
And this program runs for runs for about 2 to 3 weeks, results in a big match. Austin was in a weird, like, in his 2001 heel era, and it's very smart logic. Like, Austin was going, hey, I'm an asshole now, so I can work with, like, I should bully guys.
Yeah.
And that means I can have these but actually let's make them proper feuds.
Yeah.
And let's get these guys over. So Austin works like a nearly month-long program with Tajiri. Same with Spike Dudley.
Yeah.
But like Tajiri was so well presented, like as soon as, and it was the Orange Cassidy spot of its era, you know, that first match where Tajiri, it's a King of the Ring qualifier, he's against Crash Holly. And like he's been built up for weeks as this just errand boy for Regal, and then Regal accompanies him for his first match and is completely blown away. And the audience are blown away.
Yeah. Tajiri was probably like bell to bell one of the best wrestlers in the
And
world.
also, his matches are exciting.
So why was he presented in that way when you look at the slew of Japanese wrestlers who haven't made that switch? And of course, like you're going to be talking about your Tanahashis and your Naitos and your Okadas, but like Okada could still feasibly go to
Jerry just
WWE.
landed at the right time. He had enough kind of indie goodwill. He'd had a cup of coffee in the early stages of the WWF light heavyweight division.
Also, he wasn't tied to one of the big Japanese promotions.
And that was the thing. He was never like he was a New Japan guy or a fucking All Japan guy. Yeah. He was not. He was just this Japanese indie wrestler who migrated to the US and excelled.
He didn't go through, he didn't come in as a young lion into any of the major promotions over there. So
which probably explains, and it's horrible to say,
like Hayabusa
but
and Suzuki as well. Like
I was about to talk about how.
But why Japanese promotions? I mean, like Tajiri was out of WWE by what, like maybe 2008. He had a really good run. He had like a 6 or 7 year run.
It wasn't that long. Was it?
So not far off it. So,
but he was always a central point of the cruiserweight division. He held the US title.
Yeah.
He worked like short-term programs with Austin, with Triple H. He was always in the mix, and he was always really well respected. He wasn't treated like a jobber, like unfortunately like some of his contemporaries, like say Chavo Guerrero, for example. Yeah, Jerry was always well respected.
Or a lot of say someone who is very aligned with the Jerry throughout their career, Super Crazy.
Yeah,
he came in way too late. I think Jerry came in at the right time. He's rocking this Attitude Era coded version of the Muta gimmick. He's got amazing comic timing that Muta never had. Muta is very much, he's.
But these are the names that like I want to get into.
But Tajiri was like, he was an upgrade of a Muta act for a US audience, and he was the biggest version of that. With all due respect to Muta, who's bigger definitely in Japanese culture, but like in US culture, it's like Tajiri's the one who was like in the mix in the Attitude division. Attitude Era in lots of divisions.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned Muta. Muta is another name that was relatively successful in WCW.
Like they wouldn't have been able imagine Muta rocking up in like 1991 fucking WWF. We would have been having a great time, but they would not have been able for him.
He'd be thrown with the Orient Express.
Yeah.
He would be fucked into it because they had a white guy in there. They had fucking Paul Diamond, who's a white Croatian dude who also got subbed into the Max Moon gimmick, which was the wrestling fucking astronaut. Who's come to be among us.
And then the next kind of Japanese wrestler was Hakushi, which was quite a fun gimmick, and then you get Kaientai.
Yeah, which was a very kind of regressive gimmick. I mean, they did fun stuff, and Taka was presented like a beast for about a year. Keep in mind, like, if you're watching like biggest WrestleMania, like the WrestleMania kicked off the Attitude Era was 14, and it's just a fucking baller match between like Michinoku and Aguila, who then got who was again like the luchador stuff was not catching on that era. He got repackaged as S.A. Rios a couple of months later. They brought in Alita, and the two of them were golden. He didn't last as long as, but he wasn't a flop by any means.
No, he was
because 25 years later, like that dude did short-term runs for a small Mexican guy, and people still talk about his matches.
Yeah,
and he had a cracker title match at WrestleMania.
But that's because he was so awesome. Different though. So
and as Rios, he was so different. Again, it was like for whatever reason, like early 2000s, putting these amazing smaller indie wrestlers on the B shows, like we said, like Christopher Daniels, Loki, Bryan Danielson's Mojo, AJ Styles, S.A. Rios. And those guys were just lighting it up, and maybe that was a kind of early attempt at a cruiserweight division.
X-division.
But it was way much better when it's left on the shows that Vince McMahon did not care about.
Yeah,
and someone else was taken care of.
It was an agent going to them, here you have 10 minutes there.
Like once they end up on Raw and SmackDown, those boys are fucked. They're riding fucking lawnmowers.
So could you imagine, say, other big Japanese names, and you would probably be a lot more aware because you watch a lot of Japanese wrestling, but Misawa, Kenta Kobashi, like those thrown into the mix.
So, like, if you look at the four pillars, Masasha, I'm mixing, melding them, Masasha Banks, Misawa, Kawada, Kobashi, and Taue. The first three there, they wrestled on a joint
promotional show. That's 1990 though, isn't it?
Yeah. Three of those were on that.
Liger was on it too.
It was.
I leave Liger out because he did NXT against Tyler Breeze for some reason.
And Ibushi did. And Zack Sabre Jr. did. Lads who could have otherwise been on this in this discussion. The three, Taue is the one of the four pillars who never did any, even a cross-promotional thing. But like you could, like, what would Kenta Kobashi, like, and not early 90s Kenta Kobashi, like early 2000s Kenta Kobashi, final form, what would he have looked like in... Could he have had an Eddie Guerrero run in 2002 or 3?
You look at the different people that they brought in maybe in the late 90s that they're trying to frame as someone for Austin to even go up against.
Kobashi would have been
perfect. They bring in Dr. Death, Steve Williams. That dies a death.
Based on his Japanese work in all Japan.
That dies a death. They brought in Terry Gordy, I know, as a favour as the executioner.
Terry Gordy is slightly Terry Gordy is slightly pre-attitude here. Steve Williams flopped. I'm going to be honest. I think that they did not spend enough time with Dan Severn because I think there was way more money in him than. And again, Dan Severn had a very brief WWF run. In a cross promotional sense, he was presented as the NWA champion. That was the first time that had ever been done on a WWF show. Because for so much of the WWF existence, even all through like Vince's early years, his first decade certainly, a good chunk of that was spent with that NWA title, been the main competitor title. And all of his storytelling was based against trying to
establish their real world title.
Their title against the biggest title in the game. And then in 1998, that title fucking that's well, I think it had died a little bit of a death beforehand, but they put it on a proper
Shane Douglas.
They reverted to Crisis Control, and they actually, considering how bad the NWA as a promotion was in the 90s, they did the right thing. They put it on Dan Severn for about 3 years, and he is this literal fucking beast.
Were they going to
put UFC Hall of Famer?
Yeah. Were they going to put him with Shamrock and Blackman? Were they going to have like
that should have been the thing?
But were they going to? He was going to feud with Shamrock, wasn't he?
That was the plan. Yeah. Something fell apart. Like the rumors are that Vince just felt that he even Cornette as his manager wasn't getting him over. But like I feel like he was over. I feel like if he'd held on for another year, because you look at Blackman in 1998 and you go, "Oh, this guy's a bit fucking bland and a bit colourless." But like in 1999-2000, Blackman is one of the most over guys on the fucking roster.
Yeah,
you know, and he is. But like Steve Blackman wasn't especially charismatic, but everyone was like,
he was such a badass.
He's such a bad. He was the fucking Chuck Norris meme before that became a meme as a wrestler. Like I didn't know anyone who didn't love Steve Blackman when he showed up. And like
I think it's the theme song though mostly.
Do you ever see?
No, it's also his sheer brutality in the ring and how fucking badass.
There's a reason why Shamrock
stands out. He's so comically serious as well that like there's just there's something endearing about that, ironically, with Blackman more than anyone.
Yeah.
He's not trying to be like something he's not. He's just like,
I'm dour.
Yeah, I'm not going to cut the promo of a lifetime, but like,
and I'm going to kick
Seth Rollins should buy into that.
He had a hot feud with Shane McMahon, like, you know what I mean?
That was an awesome feud. Like.
He had a fucking hot feud with Owen Hart. I mean, he was involved in some dross as well, like, but like,
the Owen Hart feud was sensational.
But like Dan Severn, you know, 2 years down the line, you got Dan's there for Ken Shamrock. Dan's 6th round long enough. Fucking put
Dan is pushing on.
Let Dan Cobra Kai that stuff and fucking send boys up against Brock Lesnar. Like, you know.
But so like getting back to the topic, like, is the failure with Dan Severn make you think that they would fail with someone like Kobashi?
Because they'd look at them and they go like, these guys don't like. That's where Tajiri excels. They're going to look at a lot of those Japanese guys, and they're just going to try and find a fucking probably a an ethnically dubious, fucking xenophobic gimmick to probably put in him, because that was all they did. Tajiri was skillful enough, and he'd keep in mind that like he was a regular in like a massive company. He was regular in ECW, at least the third big company, like massive by the time, and he got over there. So you've got a Japanese wrestler for the first time, not the first time, but like since Muta, at least, you know, in the modern era, or that modern era at least.
He was never treated as seriously though as Muta was. Now, I agree with what you're saying, that he was given a nice run, but like Muta was in top programs.
With Sting and Flair.
But
like my thing would be like, particularly Misawa and Kawada, is like, what's going to happen to Kawada the first time they put him in with Shawn Michaels and he kicks him in the face 17 times? You know what I mean? Shawn,
just ask Vader.
Yeah, ask Vader.
I would say
the same thing that happened to Vader would have happened to them, except they would have also had the xenophobic gimmick to go with it.
They would have been in kind of
it's likely,
but dick to go.
Yeah, they would have seen out their contract and bailed back to.
So would that answer the question then, in terms of a lot of maybe territorial international stars? So we touch kind of upon Japan. You look at Mexico, El Santo, how big he is down there. You look at the UK with Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy.
There's a lot of big fish in small pond stuff here. You know, fucking.
Can you say El Santo's a big fish in a small pond?
Not El Santo, definitely not. But like, you know, nobody's going around going, why did fucking Power Uti not have a big WWF run? I think that man killed his wife actually in the end. He crops up in a lot of wrestling biographies, Mick Foley. But he was like, you know, he was like the lord of the fucking Nigerian wrestling. Maybe it was the Ugandan scene. I don't know.
Like Giant Haystacks, I know he ended up as Loch Ness in WCW.
Haystacks had his run.
Like if he comes into WWE, say in that
93
in that King Kong Bundy
era, even
like
earlier,
WrestleMania 2, like he seems like the perfect beast to go up against.
Like
Hulk Hogan.
if Vince is his US audience isn't waning, it's not at its peak. If Vince is somehow hypothetically producing a super UK super show in 1987, 1988, pre-Sky, before like our awareness of wrestling starts to creep in, he's probably going to try and book like Hulk Hogan against Big Daddy or Hulk Hogan against Giant Haystacks.
True.
But he wasn't there. And then by the time he was booking shows there, those guys were spent forces.
They were goosed by the 90s.
Did you ever watch Haystacks and Big Daddy?
Oh my God.
I have, and actually quite recently.
Yeah, I'm not too long ago
There
either.
is such a novelty about it. Like
Jesus Christ, like people paid big, like that was a big seller, like.
But you can see why the UK scene died for the 90s.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But like you
100%.
look at Dynamite Kid, he ended up he had to go to Stampede.
Yeah.
Because
Like Billy Robinson, he had
he spent most of his career in Japan.
but he had a bit of a
did have a
early
Billy
run.
Billy Robinson, he like would be a notable omission, but he's like certainly Prince Vince Jr. era. Billy Robinson
he had a run during Vince Senior's time.
Yeah,
didn't he?
Vince Senior.
did,
Yeah, but not Vince
He came
Jr.
in and challenged Superstar Graham, I think, was it? Or was it Bob Backlund?
I think it was Backlund.
I think it was back.
Maybe
not.
Backlund.
Write it in the
Write
comments.
it in the comments. If we get anything wrong, write it in the comments.
You mentioned something interesting there about the King Kong Bundy era, because I have
Is that Giant Haystack slap?
no, I have two. Yes, the biggest name, not name most famous.
Did he? No, he did business in the territory. I am a massive Brody mark.
Yeah,
But
you know
he
what?
did look, was he utilized to the degree he could have been? Fuck no. But like he did business in the territory.
You know the Powertron figures? They're up for sale. So I went to buy this on a Stan Hansen.
much.
And it was only going to be €42. I was like, yes.
Yeah, all over
shipping, 60 quid. I was like, I can't spend 100 quid.
It was like Joe the Deadly artwork you sent to me from the Etsy guy.
That Hal Haney guy, check out his stuff. It's really good.
It's unbelievable. I was getting a Steiner Brothers one and a different one for the home studio for All Elite Morro. Check it out on the channel. It was €27 each for the...
Which is doable.
Perfect. €30 each shipping.
And then on top of that, you're going to have customs tax.
It's customs
What about
tax
the
as well.
frame?
I think that was included in 27.
Was it included?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're
do you,
looking at
do you think you could?
It was over 150 quid for two of them.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Do you think you could break that frame over Sherry Martel's head, or would it hold?
Yes, I could. No, I could break it over anyone's head.
Or over the Ultimate Warrior's head? Would he have to wear a hat?
He'd wear the hat.
He'd wear a hat. Well, yeah, like, I think there's good
Yeah,
shouts.
but what's the extent of Brody's business in WWF?
Did he just come in for a couple of random shots
a couple
in
of
the
random
late
shots.
70s?
Yeah.
Stan Hansen was
But,
in
like,
for a little run.
He had a little run as well.
Stan Hansen. Okay, the thing with Stan Hansen, like, I would have loved to seen Stan Hansen in like Hogan era.
that would have been sick.
He would have been like the ultimate. Like he was
He
still
would have been better than Bob Orton, I think.
I know, like Terry Funk had such a. He would have been so much better than Bob Orton. Terry Funk had an amazing career, but like, you know, Terry and Dory in WLF in like 84, 85, 86, whatever, and then. That was then post NWA run. They were doing the same thing as Harley Race. They had peaked, even though Terry actually just had never really peaked. Stan Hansen, as resident redneck at that time, would have done a lot of business with Hogan, but his run only came in the 70s. But crucially, he fucking broke Bruno Sammartino's neck.
That's right. It was
For
Stan
real.
Hansen. Yeah.
And that was worked into the feud, and that drew massive business. So, like, Stan Hansen had a really significant run in the pre-Hogan era.
But never Vince Jr.
No, I don't think he ever. Vince Jr. put him in the Hall of Fame.
And like you,
But,
if you think
but I
of,
don't think Stan had no run during.
Not during Vince's time.
He was on that like combined Super
the
Show
one
in the early
1990s.
90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one where Bret Hart was against Misawa.
Yeah, and under the Tiger Mask.
Yes.
Yeah,
Randy
and
Savage
had
was
the shittest
against-
match of all time. Oh, Savage had an unbelievable match with. That's the best match on the show. Who the fuck was that with?
Someone will remind us imminently in the past.
Remind us in the comments, and we'll look back at it and go, "Oh yeah."
No, it was Muta.
It was Muta,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
I think it was Muta.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was the best match on the show.
So Muta was in WWE.
In that,
Like that, I
that
don't know
combined
if
show. That show took place in the
But
Tokyo
it's like,
Dome
you
as
know,
well.
you look at like Jushin Liger getting his fucking
NXT Brooklyn.
Yeah.
he gets in for one match that's well built, and it's a really lovely nod where the promotion are going, you should have wrestled here at least once, and he's going, I would have loved to wrestle here at least once.
Yeah, but like what?
They make a fanfare about it. They don't like job him out. They don't embarrass him. He gets a one and done on a big card.
TNA.
I watched that live. Like that was a big fucking deal. That's more than like a lot of Japanese legends ever got.
TNA did it. I remember them trying to recreate with Samoa Joe at Bound for Glory 06, and I thought like at that. That's when like I'm hitting the peak of my wrestling fandom and starting to discover more stuff because of the wrestling channel. So to see Liger
Like
in
Liger,
the flesh,
in 06.
like I know not in the flesh, but like live.
But imagine if they had like
and then we got to see him in OTT.
It's weird because like I do think when you look at the length and breadth of Liger's career like that, like
it's mental, isn't it?
like you go, he could have taken 2 to 3 years out for a good WWF run.
But the
At some point,
marketability of him.
the marketability. Imagine him coming in around the same time as Rey Mysterio. Like
Well, they tried it with
and this is
Ultimo
the
Dragon.
thing, it's like does he go the Rey Mysterio route where he becomes a fucking multiple time world champion, consistent main eventer, still wrestling like to a huge degree 20 years later, or does he go down the Ultimo Dragon route, which is slips on his arse on the stage of WrestleMania 20 in his big WrestleMania debut.
Yeah.
Comes in strong, but like I know it wasn't that he shit the bed. I just think
It's mad
they
because
booked him
you talk about the length and breadth of his run. I recently watched the Super J Cup '94.
Oh man, I have that on tape. Great Sasuke.
Unbelievable. But
We won't talk about the winner.
no, we won't. Wild Pegasus. Have you ever heard of a guy called Wild Pegasus? Never had a WWE
No,
run.
Black
believe I am.
Tiger.
Yeah.
In the final, was it?
Semi-finals Black Tiger. Final was Sasuke.
Sasuke ends up in WWF, doesn't he?
brief run
Briefly.
97.
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah.
fairness, like again, he has one of the not that it's a big card, but he has at least like the second best match on a 4-match card or 5-match card. That's at the
fucking
time.
then.
That is at the time. Weirdly enough, at the time in July 1997, regarded at the time as the best WWF pay-per-view of all time, and
Canadian Stampede.
yeah.
That is still possibly
And
the
it's
best
even
WWE
now in
pay-per-view.
2025, it's still like top 5
That
easily.
main event is
Yeah, but
just
the rest of
fucking-
the car,
Everything is
everybody
dead
has
hard.
their working boots
Yeah.
on. So that's Sasuke's major contribution to WWF. They wanted to build the entire light heavyweight division around him, but whatever disagreement they had, it didn't happen, and they decided to make Taka Michinoku the main guy.
yeah.
which isn't a terrible show.
Not even slightly.
He's
and
unbelievable.
again, Taka, considering Taka's look and his size and Vince McMahon's tendencies, like he had a pretty good run the Attitude Era, all things considered.
Yeah, bar the choppy, dicky.
Yeah,
That's the thing a lot of people remember.
Yeah, so next one then.
A lot of people do remember choppy. A lot of people do remember getting their fucking dicks cut off, Shane. Yeah.
Who was under the mask of Wild Pegasus, John?
Shut up. We're not allowed to talk about. There's actually there's a documentary on the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show coming out very soon about that.
Called Wild
We
Pegasus.
doing a Benoit episode?
It's
Don't say his name.
Sorry, it was Chris Benoit. Wild Pegasus.
but, one of the boys is fascinated by the story. One of the lads in Diceman, so he's working on a feature length documentary.
7 parts. Has he at any stage managed to find evidence to acquit Chris Benoit?
He's looking at conspiracy theories. I can't say that.
Just you don't even need to say anything. Just podcast wise, just give me a note. Did Kevin Sullivan do it?
Blink twice if you're in Milwaukee.
I'll let you decide. You can sound off in the comments of the video.
The Prince of Darkness. I knew it. I knew it all along.
Kevin Sullivan's a good shout, isn't he?
Kevin Sullivan is a good shout.
Jeez, I never even thought of him earlier.
He's a great shout.
Did he ever have a long period of agenting there, Anton?
Nothing. Like, I mean, he might have done a dalliance in terms of working a couple of dates in the same way that we go, hey, remember the Freebirds WWF run? We certainly fucking don't.
Yeah.
But
3 weeks.
About 3 weeks, yeah. So he might have, but like Kevin Sullivan, for such a significant character for most of the 80s and most of the
well
90s.
into the 90s, yeah.
did not get to have much of a run there, and he would have contributed an awful lot. Particularly like once the Heenan family had kind of waned and the managers run their way out, him coming in 91 or 92 alongside the fucking Papa Shango characters and the Berserker characters and some of the more like out there supernaturally coded things, particularly Giant Gonzalez is around and the Undertaker's around. Like,
well, we did get the Dungeon of Doom.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of managers, there was a manager, right?
Oh, it's a quiz time.
And he never actually worked main roster WWE, and he wrestled some matches on NXT.
He never worked as a wrestler
He did one. He never.
Ricardo Rodriguez.
No.
Sir Alex Ferguson.
Don't answer. Don't answer.
Is it Alex Ferguson?
Give us a clue.
He did work a couple of main roster matches.
So he worked in WWF.
Yeah, but it could have been. I think he could have been
James Mitchell.
I think he could have been their best ever manager, and he never got the.
Armando.
Oh, you
Alejandro
talking about Don
Estrada.
Callis?
No.
Armando Alejandro Estrada.
Armando.
Adam Cole.
Oh, come on, Morro. What the fuck?
This is complete. You're bitching on Adam Cole now.
I know he should be a manager. Actually, it turns out Vince was right about putting him as a manager.
No, I don't think so. I think that was all. And he wanted to cut his hair and put him with Keith Lee. Like, what's the fucking gimmick there?
I don't know.
Hey, we're gonna make you bald, and you manage a guy called Bearcat.
Yeah.
I would have been all for it.
Yeah, he never
I
got
would
to
have
WWE
not watched it
run
like I
as
did
manager.
most wrestling, most WWF anyway in that era.
So Kevin Sullivan, when you were kind of talking about the occult, someone who always stuck out for me when I watched WCW. Now he's meant to be a twat by all accounts.
Yeah, I know you're going to say no.
Vampiro.
Yeah.
Like when you talk about
Vampiro, like I mean, when you look at like they're setting up Mordecai and Kazarni and Hade Vanson to
poor
go up
Hade
against the
Vanson.
Undertaker, surely a little 3-month program, fucking Heidenreich as well, God forbid. But like, surely a little 3-month Vampiro Undertaker fucking dalliance wouldn't have been bad.
The
business.
Vampiro Sting stuff was the best thing in WCW at that
like,
time.
I think
Vampiro got over everywhere he was though.
Yeah, he's just.
Vampiro against the Undertaker would have been fucking cool. Although I bet you, like again, I'd say as with a lot of these things, Undertaker probably vetoed it in some.
And I also.
Now, in fairness, like Vampiro has done himself no favors.
He went off the deep
such a
end
cool look.
by the Juggalo stuff
yeah.
at the end of WCW. But
he was such a psycho outside the ring.
Yeah.
That, like Vince
like reading
just did not
Jericho's
want
book
to deal
about
with
him, you're kind of like, oh well.
Yeah. But it's not just Jericho. It's like anyone who's ever spoke about Vampiro is like, that guy's a fucking loose cannon. Like.
Just a hard dude to work with.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see him. Like talk about.
But he is
marketability.
captivating.
On that note, there's a lot of like late 90s WCW acts who never got to WF, and they would have been fucking brilliant.
I know he ended up there, but once again, that 3 weeks, Mike fucking awesome.
Yeah, I know what could have been. I got another guy that was on that like rotation of hot like indie acts that were on fucking Metal and Jacks, but like Devon Storm, aka Crowbar,
Yeah.
particularly with Daphne. Like Daphne is one of my favorite performers, particularly in that era.
The Indies in 2001.
Daphne is like she was one of the best female acts, and she was one of the few. Her and Crowbar and David Flair were one of the few bright spots in the late stages of WCW.
Daphne never
remember
them as an act in WWE 2001, 2002. It just felt like they were a bunch of fucking like kind of sound creative like weirdos in real life. You know what I mean? Like that were quite different, and they made some really good stuff, and they would have been fantastic.
Daphne
in that.
would have been an insane addition to the women's
Daphne
You know
in that
who-
women's division going up against Lisa, Trish,
Yeah,
Jazz.
would have been great though. Like tie it in with Taker beating up David Flair ahead of the Ric Flair WrestleMania.
That
so
would have been
after
amazing.
That,
Like-
Crowbar, David, and Daphne show up. Now David Flair, I can.
We're getting all these fucking useless glamour models. We could be getting fucking Daphne in.
fucking doing cool shit.
Like another person from that era who didn't get a show, who I would have loved to have seen have a WWE run. And not just because of his WCW run being so fucking hot, but the fact that he was a big star in Mexico, and he still to this day works for WWE, and he never had a fucking run. Norman Smiley.
Oh yeah.
he never had a run.
He never had a run. He's been a trainer there for nearly 20 years, one of the most respected mentors in the business. was over
One of the best
huge in
hardcore
W's.
wrestlers ever.
Amazing hardcore act, like just an amazing comedy act, but also a real good fucking shooter. Like that guy was.
He could tie you up in knots.
He had that
like.
black magic gimmick that he used in Mexico, and he was over. He could tie people in knots.
Yeah.
He was an old school British shooter,
And
such a unique
was he
persona.
trained by Billy Robinson?
He was trained by Billy Robinson.
remember when Dave Taylor came in with William Regal? I know this is around
I know, like he was so far past his prime, but you're just going, Dave Taylor's getting run.
And he looks like
Dave Taylor is
but he
getting
looked
run.
like
What
an
I'm
old
saying,
man
Norman-
badass.
He looked like somebody in the World's End that you just don't want to start
That guy is going to
You
fuck me
can
up.
team Norman Smiley with a William Regal.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Regal has enough personality for 7 Norman Smiley.
Elix Skipper, he's probably someone that showed up on Jacked quite a bit. And
Yeah.
I'm noticing, I'm going, right, Elix Skipper, and you mentioned Low Key, and they were in Triple X with Chris Daniels, and another one of Chris Daniels' partners, who was signed for a while, maybe did a Velocity run. I think is
Keep in
Kazarian.
mind, Kazarian's another one. He was on. He had
Jay Lethal, Kazarian, like that whole generation of.
those guys had brief runs. Like Kazarian was in some backstage segments, and he got proper character intro. He was probably more a glorified jobber than the rest of them. But
what
I don't think
but-
Jay Lethal did he?
He never,
I have no recollection of Jay
at all.
Lethal.
But I'm just saying, like, imagine what those guys could have done for the mid card, like 2007 to 11 when the mid card was shit.
Here's the thing, and this is probably why WWE probably stopped doing this. But WWE, give these guys a fucking platform. Over, say, the course of, a year, 2 years? All the fans who are watching this show are buzzing because, hey, like, when we watch the main shows, we got to watch fucking Val Venus matches and fucking Mabel matches, Viscera matches. You know what I mean?
And then we're seeing Venus as a tag team.
And then there's no, there's nobody like this that we're seeing on, like, Raws and SmackDown. And then WWE, like, they didn't want to sign these guys. They didn't want to follow through with Daniels maybe as a potential candidate for the, for what's it called? The
Lord of Dark,
the
higher
chosen
power.
one, higher power.
Yeah.
The dark, higher chosen one.
power.
You know, so these guys then get all that TV exposure in WWF, get a lot of hype behind them, and then they just become the linchpin of Ring of Honor and TNA.
Yeah.
And that was fucking egg on WWF's face.
Yeah, big
Not
time.
that they give a fuck, to be honest, because they didn't, but it was.
Do you know what I think about a lot as well is like a huge sliding doors moment, probably now in pro wrestling history, is the 2018-2019 Omega Bucks Page contract negotiations with New Japan, AEW and WWE.
Like, I mean, in terms of 4 of the biggest acts in mainstream US wrestling that have never darkened the door in WWE, Kenny had a run in OVW.
Yeah.
It was Deep South.
Deep South, was it?
and he left. But those are still the
Matt Jackson did
These are the people that
The
can
Bucks
still,
have been jobbers, haven't they?
they can still feasibly go there.
They can, but like, look at their age profile. I would think Omega's possibly in his last contract.
I would love to think. I'd love to
You think of them coming over then?
Yeah, but I'm
like,
still
pro
like,
wrestling
but here's
look like
here-
now, like, you know what I
here's
mean?
here's the kind of deals you would want. This is like the opposite of the fucking Sting run. And I wish that I could just say that Sting never had a WWE run, but he did. But like, the fans want to see it. It's going to make you money. Block out, like, sign an 18-month contract and fucking
more of that should be
plan
done,
creative and just do a short and sweet run. Because you will reap the benefits of the buzz from it. The lads will get a WWE run. It won't be shit. You've put some thought into it. Like, we don't need, like,
My issue there is
at the
just
point
that's
if
how
they're
WWE
not
works.
Hangman, I do feel like Hangman could come in 3 years and then he could have 10 years in WWE.
I wouldn't though if I was him.
MJF could as well. MJF, like,
would if I was
MJF
MJF.
and Hangman could have those fucking AJ Styles runs easily.
Yeah.
Bucks
I
and
would if
Kenny,
I was
I don't
MJF.
think will.
I think you've said this before. I think the Bucks should.
The Bucks definitely should.
I don't think Kenny should.
Why so?
Kenny is a candidate for greatest wrestler of all time, and I think it's important. Look at him. He is a candidate for it. Like, you can't slice it any other way.
Wait, depends here, yeah.
I didn't say anything. I just looked at the
Seen
camera.
you who fucking do your Office UK look at the camera. Fucking David Brent over there. I think it's important for a North American candidate for greatest of all time to not ever have done a WWE run. I think it's just for the perception of a healthy business.
Well, then, on that basis, who's the person before Kenny? Who's that person before Kenny? Nick Bockwinkel came in for a battle royal. Well, maybe
Who is that person?
Well, a major run. Yeah, maybe Nick Bockwinkel.
Who's that person before Kenny?
Who's the person?
A North American.
Abyss.
Is it Abyss? It could be Abyss.
Could be Abyss.
Like
we
nearly everyone else did. That's what I mean.
Like Sting was the thing before that for the longest time.
But
It's like
did his
who's the
run.
biggest star? And Sting was a huge draw. Kenny's a huge draw as well. Abyss maybe not so much.
New Jack.
Yeah. Okay, why did New Jack not have it?
New Jack, yeah, he was going to be the guy that like got John Cena in the nightclub, but he ended up giving it to that Jesus guy.
Who is that? No, that's not Hunico. It's not Hunico.
No, it's not. Some guy that just...
It's a random dude.
But like,
guy
this is what I'm talking... Remember that Escobar guy?
Yeah.
That Escobar guy, was he with Vicky Guerrero for like 2 weeks? Like, all this shit was happening in Ring of Honor and on the indies, but like also it's good that they were bringing these guys in and letting that scene to thrive because it was good for us.
New Jack would have been money. Like you can't tell me
money.
that if you could just get New Jack to not fucking murder anyone
that
he works with, any of his co-workers,
you hire a
for like
minder.
6 months.
You hire a
and
7-foot
in that
minder.
fucking like 99, like in that gap where you've very little for Austin to do, and
You bring in the gangsters
he's running
or
with
just
ideas.
New Jack?
You bring in the
Imagine
gangsters,
doing
fuck it.
Austin and fucking New Jack for 3 months.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Like,
You know, before Austin has to take a year off, like, I mean, like, and again, like in 99, that was the year where Austin was really running out of fucking opponents.
Yeah.
Like, Dr. Death Steve
Well, he
Williams
was
fell
just-
apart.
he
He
was
was been lined up for it.
repeating- he was
Austin
repeating
wouldn't work.
opponents.
He was repeating. He was just going back to Kane, Undertaker, maybe McFoley. Oh, the Rock's the face now, can't do him. No, he wouldn't work. He wouldn't really work with Triple H. He wouldn't work with Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
You know, like Steve Williams fell apart. Fuck it, get New Jack in there for 3 months.
fucking New
That's
Jack,
that was his time.
Yeah, that would have been sick.
Imagine the shit he'd be saying to Austin.
Oh, it would have been sick TV.
And
like,
he would have been ideal in Vince Russo scripted WWE.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
that's a good spot for him.
he's a
Otherwise,
chaos merchant, like, you know.
yeah, and you don't want him getting into like, and he's in there with Hardchaws in the locker room, and I think that would have actually been a good influence on him.
Yeah,
that
he might be the hardest man in the locker room.
The ECW locker room was too lax. He's going into a locker room then. Well, he's got fucking Austin, but he's got Ron Simmons, Steve Blackman, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, fucking Undertaker, fucking Bradshaw. He'd take Bradshaw easily, but you know what I mean.
Blackman took Bradshaw, I bet him up in the airport.
Fucking Joey Styles did
Kicked
too.
him in the head.
Yeah,
Kick the
Joey
fuck
Styles.
out. But like
What a man.
that would have been the right locker room. You wouldn't want to be bringing him in like they did with Sabu and Sandman for their first runs in 2006, where they're just working with a bunch of softer young lads that they can't relate to quite so much. And bullying is endemic, and they're just too old and too fucking wise for that shit. They don't want to get involved in their, in the fucking.
They just on a small crack
what
out
was
the
it,
back,
like the wrestler's court?
Yeah.
Like New Jack 99. That's his optimum run.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
He still might kill someone.
Outside of Kenny, who is the? Is it Abyss? Like, I don't know. Is there any other candidates?
No, I think actually maybe
Midnight Express.
That's tag team. That's different. But yeah, Midnight
Bobby
Express. Bobby fucking Eaton.
That's a great show.
Is like
That might actually be Bobby Eaton.
But before we get into Bobby Eaton, and we should always talk about Bobby Eaton. But like, who is like? It was Sting before Kenny. Was there anyone between Sting and Kenny between 2014 and now who
Never went
That's
there
Ken-
and is like
that
a
is Kenny.
legit candidate
That is Kenny.
that you could
That's
put in a top.
Oh no, you said North
that's
American.
Kenny's
American,
that's
yeah,
Kenny's
yeah.
slot.
Or like
then.
you could pick a good few Japanese, you know what I mean?
Before that, it's Sting, and actually Sting had a long run. So yeah, you probably are looking at Bockwinkel. Genuinely.
Jesus Christ, yeah. You probably are like.
And if you can make an argument for Brody in like the Hogan's era, which we probably can, yeah, Brody.
Abdullah the Butcher.
Abdullah is a big one, but I can't see any era in which they would have booked him when he was at his,
How do you ever
when
book
he was at his
Abdullah?
hottest. They were peak 80s where he was too much, and they were just doing like kind of rip off. Like George Steele was just doing a fucking like kid friendly version of his acts in some ways, you know.
Yeah, I like didn't Foley try to get him in into
he wanted
WWE
to
for
do
a
a
while?
He had a
program.
WCW run.
Yeah, but that was early 90s. That's when he got electrocuted on the chair.
I think it's important that there is that person who fits into that slot of
It's Kenny now.
having never gone there,
Yeah.
and it legitimizes the rest of the wrestling world.
I think so too, yeah.
I think you're going to disagree with me, but I felt at the time that Cody did a lot to help that as well.
Help what to
Help the
legitimize,
independent-
big time,
with-
big
with-
time.
with
I don't
the-
disagree with that
with
at
the
all.
whole
Cody
list
had a
thing.
legendary-
The list thing was fucking brilliant. Now, Cody does have a little tendency.
He's the leader of the Bullet Club.
To rewrite, to revise history.
Yeah.
He was never the leader of the Bullet Club.
Who's the best European wrestler to not make it over in WWE?
Rollerball Rocco.
Will Ospreay, but he's young.
And like,
Johnny
yeah,
Saint.
contemporary wise is Ospreay.
Maxer? Never got a shout
Fucking
in
Maxer's-
WWE.
Yeah.
I know he did a lot of 001 stuff. Onita. I know it's Japanese.
Yeah, Onita never went.
They brought him in.
Did they?
They brought him, no, not on TV, but they brought him in for a series of meetings in 1998, peak Attitude Era, because they got the gumption to promote the first, like, exploding barbed wire match.
Yeah.
And of course, like, Onita comes in and he's like, it's going to be him, it's going to be Foley, it's going to be cross-promotional, it'll be big.
That would have been generational.
Yeah, but, the man is traveling to New York to have a meeting with Vince McMahon. Like, what's going to fucking happen there?
Yeah, it's not ideal.
And Onita wasn't exactly in his prime. He was already, like, well established as being Mr. Liar at this point.
Yeah, but also...
He unretired so many times.
Yeah, well, Onita had, like, a retirement tour every year for
I
about
find
20
it mad that they were
years.
going to do that when, like, they also felt like they had to put Terry Funk under pantyhose.
Yeah.
Call him Chainsaw Charlie.
That was Terry's idea. That was not theirs.
I heard
It was all Terry.
I heard
apparently.
a lot of it had to do with Kevin Dunn. According to Jim Cornette.
I hate to
Jim
believe it,
Cornette.
but I would
Jim
believe
Cornette
that.
was like, no one.
I actually feel more comfortable believing that.
No one will know it's who Terry Funk is.
I'd heard like people,
Same with Cactus Jack. No one would know who Cactus Jack
people
was.
say like that's fucked up.
That's Cornette.
People
though.
say that Terry came up with it, maybe as a way of protecting his own persona, but it was so
Maybe.
obviously Terry. And we just took it as Mick's got
Chainsaw Charlie was
like
Terry
Mick's
Funk.
got three personas at this point. This is Terry doing that thing.
Doing
And
the
like,
thing.
yeah,
That's what I...
great.
Yeah, yeah.
It's Terry.
Would you count Mexico as like North America?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is. It's considered.
Well, obviously, it's El Santo then.
Well, yeah,
But you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think we've
Yeah.
completely flew over El Generico.
El Generico
Yeah,
never
I mean,
went
like
to
that,
WWE.
again, that's another one of those massive what ifs. Like El Generico would probably like in terms of like the
Do you know what match I'd
2000s
love to
indie
see?
guys
Dream match.
who never kind of transmuted to like fucking getting a shot. El Generico is probably one of the biggest Ring of Honors. Even guys like Austin Aries came in, and they had a late stage run. But the fact
Davey
that
Richards came into NXT for a while.
Yeah,
I feel like
James
Monster.
Storm came into NXT.
yeah,
for a bit,
I feel like
for a hot minute.
I feel like El Generico could have drawn
Do you
some
know what's a
money.
dream-
It's kind of like like a comedy act.
Do you know what's a dream
Cruiserweight
match though?
division.
Sami Zayn versus El Generico. Never happened.
No, never happened.
That would have been
We'll see it. So hopefully we'll see it sometime.
cinema.
But look,
Me-
like I
meshing
mean,
of
look, there's a
styles.
lot of guys,
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a lot of guys like El Generico, Monty Brown's another example.
Monty Brown. Where's he?
Monty Brown ever do a run?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Marcus
But
Cole.
I'm talking about guys who like left the business to take care of kids and and I think that's very noble.
Magnum TA with his injury.
Magnum TA, actually. Magnum TA's injury might be like,
One of the saddest things.
yeah, he
But
might
then-
have
but
been.
then again,
he might have
conver-
been the biggest star in
But
wrestling.
also conversely, while we're on it, for example, like in 2004, 2005, Monty Brown is one of the hottest acts in the business. He's like TNA's first properly homegrown like breakout star. He jumped, I think, prematurely to WWE. He gets repackaged as Marcus Corvon.
Goes thrown into ECW with the new breed. So
He
he's a
did. I
monster.
mean, look, he was a fucking talent. He did the best he could. But the fact that the fact that he wasn't getting the fucking Lashley push
yeah,
was because he was so much more readier than that. But Bobby Lashley wasn't ready to return in 2018. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then he was kind of like the polished article, and you go, "This guy's world champion now." But that could have been fucking Monty Brown in like 2006, 2007, and they fumbled him very badly. Yeah, for his first year of his run, and then the guy quit the business, and that's another big what if in some ways. But Terry Allen, Magnum TA. I mean, again, he you don't know how it's going to go. Would he have just would he have had a Luger run? Would he have had a Monty Brown run? Would he have
told Vince McMahon that he has a penchant for fucking lassoing, and then just been given a lasso and given a shitty gimmick in that era?
I think Magnum TA was on the verge of being can't miss megastar.
Yeah, but
Like,
so
he
was
was-
Barry Windham.
But Barry Windham fucked up though.
Magnum TA wasn't given a chance to fuck up. Magnum TA was the Sting that they were lining up before Sting happened, and they had to like work through they had to work through Barry Windham and like Nikita Koloff as well.
Nikita Koloff, another one who didn't make
again
it
another one. But like the thing with Magnum TA is that like he's one of those guys, like I guess maybe a David Von Erich as well, where you're kind of going like, oh my god, like this is the guy who was the industry was gearing around. Elevating this guy as the top
like
guy.
the number one guy in the industry.
You know, Magnum TA was on that journey when
you think of when Hogan started to fall off in 92, 93.
Before that.
Yeah, but when he was really gone, like, you know, Magnum TA had things worked out. He would have been in the prime position to take that spot by that period,
which is the Luger spot.
Which is the Luger spot. Also, I think my Magnum TA is that unlike some of the rest of those buckos that we mentioned, Magnum TA was rocking a particularly potentially kind of like anachronistic 80s gimmick. It was riffing very hard off Tom Selleck's Magnum PI. He would have had to do a lot of course correcting to make sure that gimmick was
translated to the 90s.
He could have
translated to the 90s.
He could have been Stone Cold before Stone Cold.
He could have been Stone Cold before. He was like, look at Adam Page has spent the last fucking 18 months riffing off Magnum TA. That could have been what Magnum TA would have been in the early 90s. Yeah. I do kind of feel like Bret Hart maybe would have been a more cutting edge on the button.
Possibly.
You know.
But you throw him in the mix of Bret Hart, young Shawn Michaels, like, geez, that could have been fucking money. Like,
Magnum TA in that era would have been. I still think like Nikita Koloff in early 90s WF would have been
a beast. I can't like. I was thinking about it today. I was like, yeah, he fucking never
came over. Yeah,
he was. I don't think he was a guy who loved wrestling necessarily from the start. He was really adept at it, and he had a really, really great run. But there wasn't injury to force him out. He just gave up the ghost.
Bobby Eaton, you were on the topic of Bobby Eaton.
Just in terms of like all time workers who were never going to be necessarily main event guys, but you going like look at the WWF's tag team division from like 1993 to 96. And you tell me that division could have done with Bobby Eaton? Team some young lad up with Bobby Eaton.
Imagine a 9-month Bobby Eaton Intercontinental title run in that period.
I don't think that would have happened.
Well, you got Dean Douglas, you got fucking Mario Jannetty.
Bobby Eaton is considered one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time. He has, to my opinion, and this is my take on it, the greatest punch in wrestling
history.
Greatest
punch. It's unbelievable.
There is never, and that is such a big part of the game. And he is the best. He is the fucking Daniel Day-Lewis of wrestling punches. He is the best. No one's better before and better since. Like, well, you're telling me that you can't get Bobby Eaton in for a fucking
couple of years around the mid-90s when you're
Did Rock and Roll Express get a bit of a shot for a while?
Weirdly enough, they came in at a time where they just seemed too anachronistic and they didn't fucking update their gimmick enough. But this
was in the 90s, wasn't it?
They're on WrestleMania 14. They wrestled at WrestleMania.
Cornette brings them in.
Yeah.
Cornette brings them in as part of this weird 1998 NWA invasion angle.
There's the new Midnight Express,
which is Bodacious Bob and Bombastic Bart. Is that other variant?
No, you're right.
Did they have the NWA tag titles?
There's a feud for the NWA tag titles between Rock and Roll Express, the new Midnight Express, and the Headbangers, funnily enough. And maybe the fucking Blackjacks in some fashion.
They were around,
the new Blackjacks. This was the era where like it was just new versions of old teams. Like the Blackjacks, the Rockers.
You're right though about the anachronism of fucking when they did come in.
Yeah, they're still rocking a mid-80s gimmick.
Yeah, and
they're still doing it to this day.
And they're still doing this day. No, but it's actually come back around again.
Now it actually fits better now than it did then.
It does fit better now. In the 90s, you're in fucking like in the peak of like, you know, like Gen X fucking grunge era 90s.
Yeah.
Alternative culture seeping into it. Wrestling is melding with that alternative culture.
Look at what Shawn Michaels did. He stole your gimmick and then updated it.
Yeah, look, and
you think of it.
Like from the Rockers to HBK.
Ricky and Roberts
you
felt
take the Midnight
in that
Express,
era.
or who are we talking about? The Rock and Rollers, right? The Rock and Rollers, Rock and Roll Express were at their peak under Ronald Reagan. And they fit in again under Trump. It's
they've
perfect.
Got mullets. They're like kind of like vaguely like, you know, hair metal 80s. That was the vibe. But then they have their first proper WF run in 1998.
It just makes
and
no
they're rocking
sense.
the exact same gimmick that they were the hottest shit going in 1985.
This kind of stems then, like the Midnight Express never got the shout to be in WWE.
As an act, yeah. As the actual performers, like, you know, Stan Lane, Dennis Condrey, you know, like, yeah, no.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Not Stan Lane. Fucking. It was either Fabulous. Was that?
No, there was 2 iterations of the Midnight
Yeah.
Express.
Was it Stan Lane, Dennis Condrey, Bobby Eaton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Steve Kern was in the Fantastics.
Fantastics.
Uh,
They never did. They never came
Yeah,
over
they
either.
never. Well, he did. He came in.
Yeah, but the
late singles run.
The team didn't, though, didn't they?
No, team never did. No.
Fuck.
the one I'm going to finish on anyway for me personally is Abyss. Abyss's run in TNA, he was so different than what everyone else was doing in TNA at the time. Like you had the X Division, you had the main event scene, then you had an Abyss match.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At that barbed wire match, I remember like devastated that Man United were playing Blackburn on the day that I was meant to be taping Sabu versus Abyss in the barbed wire match. I watched the barbed wire match instead. His Monster Ball matches with Jeff Hardy.
Unbelievable.
Like he started to kind of like the toll started to be taken on his body, obviously. Even by the time he starts being with Immortal and brings in Janice, which is something I don't think he ever needed. But Abyss with Sinister Minister and around that 05-06 era.
That's his best era with Sinister
Like
Minister.
there was an attempt to bring Abyss in at some point, and I fell
For
apart.
WrestleMania,
I think
wasn't
it was
it?
for WrestleMania. And the unfortunate thing is, and look, I'm like, this is bringing up the Undertaker discourse. I'm literally digging up that corpse. I didn't weigh in too much at the time.
Yeah,
But
you
I do
left me
ta-
to fucking hang out to dry.
Yeah, I fucking did.
He sent me private messages in support of my Undertaker text.
Private message. What are you talking about?
They're private.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They don't exist.
But nothing on the socials.
But the reason I don't think that the Undertaker's, like particularly his latter stages run, is going to be held up as fondly as, say, for example, Sting's in future years, is that like Undertaker there was too many repetitive opponents, and if like maybe you bring Vampiro into it, maybe Vampiro's in that fucking slot in 2006 against The Undertaker that Mark Henry is in at WrestleMania. And we don't have that. We've seen loads of Undertaker Mark Henry. We're going to get loads of it for years to come. You know, in the same way that maybe Sting is in that fucking slot in 2003 and not fucking A-Train and Big Show. You know, surely Abyss...
That would have been a very, very
Like those two,
much more interesting.
In
run.
my opinion, I know a lot of people consider them to be the greatest matches of all time, but like for me as a punter at the time, and even now retrospectively, those two Undertaker Triple H matches. You're telling me one of those interminable fucking bouts. I did bite for the false finishes of the Cage one. That wasn't so bad, but those two.
It was just so long.
You're telling me one of those bouts couldn't have been Abyss? Like we couldn't get Undertaker and
Undertaker
actually
Abyss Hell in a Cell.
and like all of the shit people say, and Undertaker himself apparently, about like when Sting did come in, why they couldn't have had a good match, which I think is absolute fucking bullshit. But you're saying that a couple of years earlier than that, Undertaker with prime Abyss couldn't have had one of the all-timer violence.
Hell in a Cell.
Hell in a Cell. Like imagine that at WrestleMania.
That would have been unbelievable.
Like in terms of fans' expectations and fans booking fantasies and making money, like, and it's the same. It does go for going forward with like Triple H's. What his attitude should be to getting the Bucks in or Kenny in for a run. It's like book the shit people want to see. Like make it as big as possible. Like who are you politicking here? You're just
Also,
politicking yourselves.
if Abyss is a new character, there's also that jeopardy of he could actually be
Because
the
their
one to beat
attitude
him.
at the time would have been no one knows who Abyss is. Yeah, well, like I tell you what, do the fucking vignettes for 3 weeks, lads. Here
Yeah,
you get.
tell us who
See
he
how
is.
you get on and work
Tell
for
us
Mick
who-
Foley. You know what I mean?
But sure, like this attitude was going around there a few weeks ago of like arguing, why isn't there 100 million video packages for Mystico coming into the Arena Mexico show? All you needed was his entrance.
Yeah,
And then
But
the
also-
person watching at home goes, holy fuck, this dude's a big deal. You
But
know what I mean?
also, I did also think that
think you just need to see
it
Abyss.
was smart, even in that context, to like for MJF to reference him being Sin Cara, because
Yeah,
you're going, oh, he's had runs that we're familiar with, even if it wasn't a success. But that makes it even more impressive that this guy bounced back and he's the biggest fucking star in Mexico.
From a TNA perspective, while we're just before we're wrapping up, we haven't mentioned many kind of female stars. ODB could have totally fit into
Definitely.
the WWE, and the Beautiful People.
Beautiful People definitely would have been a really, really good act too. Particularly at their peak, they would have added a lot.
Yeah.
Now, well, no, but like, yeah, certainly at the time. And that's the thing, maximizing people at their time. And like, even like Awesome Kong would have been that. She would have been like the female equivalent, I think, of Bruiser Brody. And she had an amazingly.
Did she do a couple of
She had an
matches?
amazingly
As Karma. She
memorable
came in
run
as
as
Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
She had such a memorable run as Karma, but it's all based on genuinely probably about 10 appearances.
Yeah.
Like she was ripping up dolls and stuff.
Yeah.
A good vignette.
Is there anyone that you would highlight?
Manami Toyota there in the 90s All Japan Women's.
Like Megumi Kodome.
Yeah,
Hakuto.
Like Jesus Christ, they could have built an absolutely ridiculous women's division.
Here's the thing. They like for a year in 1995, they bring in Aja Kong.
Yeah.
You know, they bring in Bull Nakano. They've got like amazing Japanese women's wrestlers coming in at the peak of Japanese women's wrestling.
Yeah.
And you know, Meltzer for a long time would always say that like that was the best wrestling he's ever seen in his life.
93 to 91 to 94 All Japan Women's.
That was for the first time where, like, without doubt in the world, the hottest promotion is a women's promotion.
Yeah.
And WWF brought them in, and they're having fucking amazing matches. They're like, you know, they're on SummerSlam and they're on Survivor Series, and they're just showing the lads up, and
they're showing the lads up.
Like they're doing state of the art fucking wrestling.
Yeah. Like if you go, like you look at them matches today, any combination of what John mentioned, you look at those today, they actually still look state of the art.
They still look state of the art, and it's terrible that they were cut off. Like, you know, so like. I do feel like, you know, with the way the women's talent pool tends to be worldwide, that like hot stars get snapped up pretty quick and get to have runs.
And
AEW as well.
AEW as well. Like,
and
AEW,
eventually there will be people who probably will have runs. I'd expect
you're going to talk about Global Wars? Is that your upcoming thing in All Elite Morro?
It's not going to be. It's going to be separate than the live. I'm not doing it live.
Okay,
it's too dense.
So just before we leave
get your spreadsheet.
Can I just ask one question before you finish? It's probably a loaded question, but like, who is an Irish wrestler who's not got a run, who you'd love to see getting a run? And it's probably going to constitute current talent to a degree, but actually you can feed it into the past as well. Who do you think genuinely could have had a good run, who should have had a run?
Or who can have a run?
Or who now can have, who now like is a surefire bet for going like,
Bullet Smith, I think, Keane Noonan, those two as young guys.
Josh.
I think Josh got a good shot. Yeah. There's actually a lot.
LJ, like LJ.
LJ, definitely. Like, there's a lot on that roster.
The depth of talent is sick.
But if you're looking back on it, I think maybe guys that aren't working, because like you like anybody has a chance now. That's the thing.
I think like even like Paul Tracy was probably like 10 years too late in some ways.
Session Mott is someone who could have had a bigger run.
I think Session Mott still could have a
She'd have to get in tremendous shape. Obviously Joe had that run in NXT. Tron had the run in NXT. Like Paddy Morrow is just a fucking genius.
Paddy Morrow, again, but you're like different promotions at different it's just people peaking at different times, or like, you know, as in the case of Paul Tracy, you're going like, geez, I would have like his acting fucking like late 90s. If WCW had stayed fucking alive, like WWF wouldn't, like, the nuances of his character would not translate to a Vince McMahon company, ironically, as an Irish character. But I don't think he would have got that, like, that Anglo-based like fucking like, you know, estate running snob character, which is
the Connecticut snob that you gave to Triple H, but he wouldn't think an Irish person would have
an Irish person like 20 plus years ago when Paul Tracy was doing, like, well, he's still doing that gimmick, but like when he pioneered that gimmick, like there was nothing like that. It was such a cool subversion of what you'd expect from an Irish gimmick, and that's why like someone like him at that time would have been a fucking shot in the arm. As I said, particularly in WCW, getting him in the mix with guys like,
I will mention WCW. Alex Wright, never in WWE.
Alex Wright's another fucking big one.
He never went across.
That's a big European wrestler that would have got over in WWE.
Yeah.
There was a guy on the Indies
Not
there
Berlin.
A few years ago. It was awesome. I'd love to see him back. Walter.
Walter would be nice, wouldn't he?
I'd love to see Walter back in wrestling.
But is there anybody jumping out? My pick is Abyss.
Yeah, my pick is.
Is this for some, like, this is all time, is it?
What's our pick?
Like someone. Oh, okay. So pick someone who's never been in the Fed that you would have liked to see have a run.
Yeah, I never want to see Kenny there.
Like ultimately, and then maybe someone that hasn't been in the Fed yet that could still potentially go. And you can pick tag teams.
I would like to see MJF go there in the future.
But like someone who historically hasn't gone first.
What do you mean?
I'm picking Abyss.
Oh, Brody in WrestleMania 3-4.
Oh, right, okay.
But someone that hasn't been there.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Here's my hypothetical ones. My hypothetical one that can't happen is fucking, I'd love to see Eddie Gilbert rocking in maybe 96, 97 if he had lived.
He had a bit of a run in WWF, apparently.
A very small. Well, he wasn't on TV. Was he a TV act?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I'll go with I like the idea of New Jack just sowing absolute chaos there in 99.
New Jack in fucking Russo era would have got to do so.
I kinda like-
as close to murder as he could have gotten.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of both New Jack and Vampiro because I feel like it would have been such a like
99, like they're kids.
outside of
Stevie Ray, like bring in Harlem Heat.
No,
Stevie Ray,
there's a big argument to be made for Scott Norton. Like,
What about Doom? Bring in Doom.
and we got Ron, and we also had Butch. We just got them separately.
Yeah, I know.
And we got
separately,
Teddy
but, like,
Long,
Bring in Doom.
the Acolyte.
the Acolyte.
Yeah, he was there as
Who's the Acolyte?
Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Was he the
like,
Acolyte?
He was,
fucking
he was fur face for a while as well.
Man, Zodiac.
Zodiac. Yeah,
All right, I'm picking Abyss.
yeah, that's good.
Let's
One.
wrap
I'll
this
go
up.
New Jack.
You're going New Jack, and you're going Eddie Gilbert.
I'll go as a wild one. I'll go Eddie Gilbert for
And
fucking crack. Yeah.
Someone who I'd like to see get a WWE run now, I would. Like, there's obviously MJF, there's Young Bucks and all that, but I'm going to say Moose.
Moose is a great show. Technically, he's kind.
Yeah, I know.
He's kind of had. He's kind of had.
But like, I mean, like, get that US title on Moose. Him and Jacob Fatu. Boom.
My one for right now, like the person who I would be most excited to see in a WWE ring, and I'd love to see what he can do. And I think now's the time, and he is ready for it. And his current company do not need him anymore.
Sure, boy.
Get Orange Cassidy in there.
What about Eddie Kingston?
No,
I
he's
just
stylistically.
feel like Orange would soar in there.
Yeah, I think Eddie.
And
Eddie's
I'd love to see them book Eddie and book him properly, but I don't think they
No,
would.
they won't. Yeah.
Imagine LAX
Triple H-
homicide in there.
Homicide's a big one. Triple H is too much of a body snob. It's not body snob. But I do feel Orange Cassidy.
I don't
would-
think Eddie
Orange
Kingston's
Cassidy
the guy
would
that I
shift
don't-
so much merch for TKO.
Imagine the first time he does his bit where he. I think it's just recreate
He's
his whole
Mr.
thing.
Iguana.
Of
That's
course
what
they'll
he is.
recreate.
He's just a little Mr. Iguana. And you're picking MJF.
Yeah, I think MJF just
He's,
Orange
stylistically.
Cassidy.
he's definitely
Moose.
having a run. He's definitely having a
Like,
run.
stylistically, he makes perfect sense. I think he'd fit in with their style.
Yeah, I mean, look, the dude is still 27.
Yeah, it's fucking
He,
nuts.
I said, he can still have an AJ run. So can Hangman. They can have 10 years in WF.
They could have but
If
not
they
come
go
at
in
fucking,
3 years' time, they can still have a 10-year run.
Yeah, but not have be 45 when you're finishing. You know what I mean? Go at 30, finish at 40.
I'd love to see Kenny in there.
No, fuck off.
This has been the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. I'm been the big beefy boy, Shaz Beef. He's been the old Buck Morrow. Charlotte Morrow next Sunday.
Peace,
Johnny the
Mortos.
Beast Mortos. Thanks very much for listening. Please comment below if you like his hat, whatever you want to say. If we've said something
buy
wrong.
it on
I'm not into his hat.
Actually, we get fuck all money of it.
No, buy this one.
I don't
Buy
know.
this one. Don't buy that
John,
one.
which are you buying, John?
This is what. This
I
is
can't
like.
buy neither.
This is when we break. It's like a brand
Get me one
split.
hat.
Yeah, we are a brand split.
It's like a
this
brand
is like
split.
a draft where one of us drafts you and we give you the hat.
Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show.
It's
or
been a
All Elite
wrestling
Morrow.
fan, wrestling show. I'm about to pick a hat.
Please comment, like, subscribe. Thanks very much. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. Good luck. Oosh.